So we're talking about the three stages. We talked at length about the notion of kingship embodied in Dovid Hamelech. The second thing is, which is the second component of the second stage of the purpose of creation. So it reaches a climactic moment, a plateau, in the second component unique to King David, and that is the Beit HaMikdash, right? The Holy Temple. Even though he didn't build it, his son built it, but as we told you the story, it was all on his merit, and in fact the doors of the Heichal wouldn't open until Shlomo HaMelech invoked his father's merit. It was God's indication, communication from heaven, from Hashem, that all of this is built in Dovid Hamelech's merit. Now, what is unique about the Beis HaMikdash? We had a house for God before, for 1,000 years, since the Mishkan is built in the desert. What's unique about the Beit HaMikdash? So let's have a look at paragraph 8, Ot Chet. Bottom of the page, right-hand column. Yiddush, the novelty shall Dovid Hamelech, King David, lagabi atachtonim yalula elyonim, in the stage 2, which is all from below to above, and stage 1 is heaven descending to earth, as we explained at length. And then began stage 2, our task of elevating the world mitzvah by mitzvah. So this is the movement from below to above. The giving of the Torah was God to man. Thereafter begins man to God as we fulfill the commandments and again refine the world. And it culminated in the whole notion of kingship, as we explained, sovereignty. Now the second thing is, it's expressed in the Beit HaMikdash. Hanikra Kedel Sefei Al Shmo Shel David, as we said earlier, the Beit HaMikdash is called on King David's name. What is unique about it? What's novel about the Holy Temple is not only Shebo, that's in italics because he wants to emphasize the world, that in it, the divine presence rested. That's not the point. Like something rests or dwells on something else. That's the way it was till now. The house for God that the Jews built beginning under Moshe Rabeinu, as outlined in great detail in many parshas in the Sefer Shemot. There what's happening is God's presence is revealed in that place. That's true. But the place itself does not become holy. The place itself doesn't become holy. So where the place where the Mishkan, the house of God, stood, before it was built in Jerusalem, it was in Shiloh for hundreds of years, and in Nov and Givon, these places are not holy. They were holy only while it stood, like a beam of light. When the beam of light moved on, the place reverted back to what it was illuminated. The place was illuminated while the light was shining there. When the light moves on, then the place where illuminated before reverts back to the way it was. Those places aren't holy. All the places that the Mishkan stood in the desert, and there was one place that was there for 20 years. We don't know that location. We're not interested in that location. There's no sanctity. It has no sanctity because it's all like a beam of divine revelation beaming to the world from us to below. And that is why, if you look at the construction, the materials of the Mishkan, so look at the most upper materials. The upper materials, which were the coverings, were hides and tapestries. Hides and tapestries come from animals. So it's animal life at the top. Then supporting it are the wooden beams, that's plant life. And the very base, the beams were placed in these sockets of silver, which is inanimate. So notice the physical design of the higher you go, the higher the form of life. So it's godliness descending from above to below. Follow that? That's reflected in the nature and the materials by which it was constructed. The Mishkan, aside from the fact it was a temporary structure, a collapsible, interlocking temporary structure, not a permanent place where God resides. It moved from one location to the other. Aside from that, as we're pointing out now, the very construction implies higher, lower, lower, lower. Whereas the Beit HaMikdash, once built in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, the place becomes holy. The physical location, even after it's destroyed, remains holy. Here, what has happened is holiness, sanctity has been unlocked from within. Not sanctity, holiness projected to the place, but revealed and cultivated within the place itself, from within the place. Again, that's a below to above. That's transforming the world itself and making it holy. Not just a recipient of holiness, but it itself becomes holy. You follow? So the ground itself becomes holy. Like all the mitzvahs we do, what's unique about them is that the physical components themselves are holy. Shabbos is a holy day. It's not just a day on which we do holy things. Yom Tov, Shabbos actually is interesting because Shabbos is determined by God. It's every seventh day. But still, the day itself is holy. A greater expression of this is Yom Tov. Who determines what day Yom Tov is? The court. And there's all kinds of calculations as to when a new month would be declared a new month. And that will determine what day Rosh Hashanah is, what day Yom Kippur is. It's determined by sighting of the moon and calculations. And it's a very elaborate science, as it were, all decided by the court would meet and decide and discuss the establishment of the Jewish calendar. Every month it was the month was declared, the first day of the month was declared by the court. Just to explain, a month can have 29 days or 30 days, so there's a great variable. Half our months have 29, half our months have 30 days, and there's leap years. So that completely changes, when a particular event will take place. We're adding a whole month. That's determined by the court. So Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, who decides when that is? We do. The court, the Beth Din, the Jewish calendar. And Yom Kippur is not just a day when we do holy things, like fast and pray all day. The actual day is sacred. It's time. All it is time. It's time. It's a day in the calendar, determined by the sun and the moon and all of the physical components of life. And yet this day is sacred, different. Created by whom? By man. That's another example. The Beit HaMikdash is the most graphic example because it's a physical place, not just a time. Physical, tangible, the ground is holy forever. Because this is not godliness being projected from above to below. This is godliness being cultivated and accessed from within creation, empowered by the giving of the Torah. As we said, when God gave the Torah, remember? So the Torah says that it was a great voice that had no end. Remember, we explained the meaning that it had no end, that it did not have an echo. God's voice didn't have an echo. So what's the significance of God's voice not having an echo when he said the Ten Commandments? We explained that an echo means that the voice bounces off. It's not absorbed fully by the material. That's an echo. So God's voice has no echo, but spiritually means it's a spiritual thing, that God's presence penetrates all of existence, which we can then access from within creation, mitzvah by mitzvah, and elevate and sanctify the world. And where does it come to? An apex of the realization of that great objective. Where is this expressed? Most tangibly, with the physical world itself becomes holy forever. That's the Beit HaMikdash. And who is it? King David. And that is consistent with who King David was, the warrior, the king. We explained at length for the last 3 or 4 sessions, right? The whole idea of what monarchy and kingship means and why it is and what it is. And it's all about a surrender, a total surrender and connection from below. So let's continue the text. Top of the next column. Omdam true. Gam be Mishkan matzav me'ein zeh. The Mishkan, which is the sanctuary that existed until the building of the Mikdash, of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. True, there was godliness revealed there. However, Mishkan lo chadar l'makom shebo amad. The holiness did not affect the place. The Mishkan did not affect the place upon which it stood. And holiness didn't remain in the place. Once the Mishkan was dismantled and moved on, the place remained as it was. However, the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, Gam la'achar ha'churban, even after the destruction, Nishara kedusha b'makom ha'mikdash, the holiness remains. And we may not go there. We may not go there. Certain parts we can go, but we may not go in certain parts because we all have to be ritually pure. And none of us are, because we don't have the process of ritual purification, which needs the red heifer and the Sanhedrin and many other details. But this is a complex discussion. It's a complex discussion because in theory, friends, if we had access to the Temple Mount, we would have to bring, for example, on Erev Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, because it's not dependent upon the building. The place is holy, and you bring it in the courtyard. And that would create, imagine if all Jews were descending on the Temple Mount to bring the Korban Pesach. So I want to tell you that this is one of the reasons by divine providence that God arranges it, that it's not in our control. Because if it was, even though on the one hand it's a terrible thing that we relinquish the holiest place to our enemies, it's like insanity. On one hand, it's insanity. On the other hand, in a perverted way, it's a good thing because this way we cannot bring the Korban Pesach, not a Pesach. Now, in 1968, the first Pesach after the 67 war, where the control of the Temple Mount was not yet fully under the Wafdi, it was still in Jewish hands. It presented a big problem. And the Rebbe instructed anyone that would listen to him that you should not be in Jerusalem on Erev Pesach, because then you're obligated to bring the Korban. You have to be far away for that year. Hello, Rabbi Yaakov, yeah. No, we can nicht machen heint. Was soll nicht machen heint? No. Yeah.
Very, very tired of workers also. Extra costs. But did you speak to the people who are in charge of the center?
The people in charge, no, that's the Ichi will deal with that. I mean, it's.
If Ichi get them, if Ichi can get them for this, we're doing graveside, right?
Yeah.
If Ichi can get a 12 o'clock time for a graveside today, then I can probably do it.
Yes. Okay. So.
I don't want to be gone between tonight.
Okay. Okay. So let me get on to it. Huh? Where's looking there? Yeah.
If you can get me at 12 o'clock graveside, yeah.
Okay, I'll get back to you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so we've got to get onto this. So just to wrap this up, what were you saying? Yeah, so that year that have instructed the people should be a certain distance to be away. You're not obligated to go. Not to be near the Temple Mount, because if you were, you would have to go on Erev Pesach and bring a Korban Pesach, and again, that would have created World War III, at least within Israel itself. So, but now, anyway, it's a moot point because it's not in our control. We can't do it. But all to bring out that the place itself is holy. Now, we continue that work thereafter, to sanctify and elevate the world mitzvah by mitzvah, place by place. Where is it seen again? The symbol of the transformation of the physical world into a home for God for the first time ever in the Beit HaMikdash. That's the first time in history ever that a physical place is holy because God's revealed there, present, and forever changed, and will never revert back. First time, only location on the planet. But it's symbolic of everything we are doing, mitzvah, wherever you go. Wherever we go, our mission is to elevate the divine sparks there by doing mitzvahs and learning Torah and doing good deeds, etc., making blessings. Now, we're not turning it into the Beis Hamikdash, but in some way we really are. In some way we are, because after Mashiach comes, the holiness of Israel will extend to the whole world. And in some way, the holiness of the Beis Hamikdash will extend to the whole world. We are creating the infrastructure for that now. Wherever Jews have been and mitzvahs are done, like the wiring is there, the plug is there, then as soon as the moment comes, it's all flows. The whole world is spiritually lit up with the presence of God. But we've made the wiring throughout the 2,000 years, 3,000 years since the Torah was given, mitzvah by mitzvah. And that is why, that's the deeper reason for our exile and dispersal, and Jews have been banished everywhere. The deep, I say deeper because the external reason, it's a punishment. Exile is a punishment for failure to fulfill the commandments, as prophesied by the prophets. That's true, but a deeper reality is a deeper motive. It's all part of the divine plan that Jews be everywhere in order to elevate that place and have it ready for God's presence to be revealed there when the moment comes, when Mashiach comes. So there's a famous stories of one of the disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. I won't go into all detail, but just give you the general idea that he wanted to travel for Rosh Hashanah to be by his master, the Baal Shem Tov, as every chassid wants to be. But his ship he had to travel by boat. And it ended up, there was a storm and so on, and ended up on some distant island. To his great dismay. Rosh Hashanah alone. Anyway, he had a shofar there. And he davened and prayed with a humbled and broken heart. He was such a spectacle for the locals that the king himself came to see this strange person that had washed up, shipwreck, and he was praying for many hours, and he engaged the king, and the king was deeply impressed with his sage wisdom and so on. And eventually he was able to leave a boat, whatever, and leave the island, and came to the Baal Shem Tov, who told him, you should know, by you going there, you elevated this place, and Jews don't have to go there ever to be exiled in this place. You made such a sanctification of God's name. Your prayers there elevated the divine sparks. Your engagement with the king represents the entire, personifies the population, and him being inspired by you, and thereafter living a more moral, sanctified life because of the many hours of discussion that he was with this disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, which then trickled down to the entire population. This place is ready. So you spare Jews having to be taken there, God forbid, often we go there in chains, in exile. Now this story is true of all of us, wherever we are. Wherever there's a reason, as King David says in Tehillim, Hashem and Tzadigever Koinonu, that God directs the steps of man. Wherever we are, you think you're going there to buy, to sell, vacation, you were lost, whatever Hashem designs it, you need to be in this place at this time to do mitzvah, to say Torah, to make a bracha on some water, whatever, to engage the moment in a mitzvah way. Okay, so that we understand now that how in Dovid Hamelech is embodied the second stage, kingship and Beis Hamikdash. We're clear? Now the third. Who's the third? The Baal Shem Tov. Where do we see the connection? Just not just on the literal. We're saying to this day. What's the connection to this day? We're talking, it's all Shavuos. The Torah is given on Shavuos. King David passes away on Shavuos. That's the culmination of King David's life. And the same thing in the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov passed away on Shavuos, so that therefore means that this day is the culmination of his contribution to the great mission of the world becoming elevated, sanctified, and a home for God. Now, in order to understand this, we're just going to begin this now. I'll read you this passage in the Talmud to you, and I'll get it on my phone, because that's why phones exist. Aside from all the good things I'm sure we do with it, but to study Torah and have Torah at your fingertips, I've got the entire Torah at my fingertips. Kabbalah, Talmud, Mishnah, anything, everything. So looking here for Talmud, I want to get tractate Baba Bas. Let me read you what it says. Oh. Here's what it says, friends. Fascinating piece, fascinating teaching. It's talking about the Messianic year Mashiach will come. And the Gemara says like this, I'll read it in English. So with regard to the future glory of Jerusalem, the Gemara says, quotes the verse in Isaiah, and we say this in one of the Haftorahs soon, after Tisha B'Av. I forgot which one, but this is one of the Haftorahs, maybe the first. V'samti kat kod shimshotayich. I will make, now shimshotayich, some say it means windows, pinnacles, he translates it. I'll make your windows, the windows of Jerusalem, will be made of kadkod. Now it's clear it's a kind of stone. But what kind of stone? You never heard of the stone? Stone called kadkod. Spelled in Hebrew, Chaf Dalet, Chaf Dalet. I don't know if you can see it there. I don't know if you can see it. Chaf Dalet, Chaf Dalet. So what is this stone? What is this? So the Gemara says, Rav Shmuel, the son of Nachmani, said, 2 angels in heaven, Gabriel and Michael, disagree with regard to the material that will be used to form the windows, the walls of Jerusalem. Let's call it the walls. So 2 angels in heaven are arguing what it's going to be. And some say that this argument, this dispute, is between 2 sages in the West in Israel, also arguing. Who are the sages? Rabbi Yehuda and Chizkiah, the son of Rabbi Chia. What's the argument? Both in heaven and on earth. One said it will be made of onyx, in Hebrew, Yoshve. Chad Omar Shoham. And the other one said it'll be made of jasper, Shoham. The name Shoham is one of the stones of the breastplate of the high priest. So one says again what? Shoham, and the other Yoshve. Shoham and Yoshve. Shoham is onyx and Yoshve is jasper. And these are stones in the breastplate. So they're arguing, what's it going to be? So the Holy One, blessed be he, said, Amul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So God said to the disputants, the angels in heaven and the 2 sages in the West in Israel, I'll make it of both. It'll be both. And that's hinted in the word katkod, which means kedain and kedain, like this one and like that one. So it actually isn't a stone at all. It's a fusion of 2 words, like this and like this. In Hebrew, kazeh v'kazeh. Kedain or kedain. Put the 2 words together, katkod. End of Talmud, end of quote. So it's all very strange. What's going on here? What's the significance of this argument? That they're arguing in heaven, what kind of precious stone, and they're arguing, the sages are arguing, and it's so significant that God says, I'm going to make it like both. So this will explain, God willing, next week, and it will tie in to, we have a few minutes, I just want to get onto this it'll tie into the whole.
Are you saying that it's trying to incorporate both physical and spirituality into one? thing, it's an impossibility for us. Because trying to combine two stones as one.
Well, physically, yeah, no, a bit of this, a bit of that. I don't know how exactly physically it's going to look. But the symbolism of it, the deeper meaning is very profound. And what it has to do with is, what's the debate have to do with? The debating, what is greater? Wherein lies the deeper connection? Revelation from above to below, or elevation from below to above? That's their argument. And that's the two angels, and we'll explain next week. Michal and Gavriel. Michal is chesed from above to below. Gavriel is Gevurah from below to above. That's the two sages. One was a chesed, one was Gevurah. The two stones. One illuminates light and one reflects light. So one is a source of light, projecting, and the other one reflects light that is similar to above to below or below to above. And we're going to explore next week what exactly that argument is, with God's help. And then we'll see how Chassidus is the embodiment of both, of these two directions. Because till now we spoke about two separate movements. Sinai, God comes down. Now begins the work of from us below to above, two separate stages. But the ultimate is the fusion simultaneously. We're just giving the outline of what we're talking about. We have not explained it, but this is what's coming. So God willing, we'll talk about it all next week.